Viewers here on NCN. We interrupt just a bit of your broadcast to bring to you this very important interview as we discuss very important matters of national interest. My name is Shaquan Gill, and I'm joined by the Minister of Housing and Water, Minister Collin Croal, as we discuss some issues occurring in the Mocha area on the east bank of Demerara. Minister Croal, thank you for joining me.
Good evening, and it's a pleasure.
So, Minister, there are a few squatters in the Mocha area who we've seen have been led to disrupt government's developmental program in that particular area. If you can, just give us a brief outline or history background as it relates to what is happening in the area of Mocha.
Sure. Well, it's along the entire East Bank corridor, first of all. If you travel along there, you'll see massive infrastructure work for opening of new housing development. But equally important in opening new areas for housing is the accessibility. And Guyana has an ongoing issue in terms of, for the East Bank corridor, congestion. And so as we grow, then it necessitates us building infrastructure work for new road networks. And so you have the traditional East Bank corridor. Since we got into office, we would have had a connection between the Mocha to Great Diamond, to Diamond itself, and that is between 6th and 7th Avenue. Prior to that, when we were in office, because nothing much was done during the last government tenure, you would have had a connection between the industrial road at Eccles to the Mocha Providence Road. Now, as part of our expansion and growth, necessitates us building a 4-lane road. So you have in the first phase, we've completed from Mandela to Eccles, and that's being in use all of the time, and that is commissioned. And then you have a new route that was developed, and that is continuing from this very existing route at Eccles that continues all the way to Diamond. Already, we are finalizing the alignment that will now move you from Diamond to coming out somewhere by Craig in the first instance, and then of course continuing along various parts of the East Bank all the way to London Canaan. And so there's a contract already awarded, and that is from the Eccles to Diamond, Great Diamond. We're talking about investments on the East Bank corridor there for about $13 billion. And these were awarded in various lots. Works are ongoing, it's progressing smoothly, except one of the lot. Already we've actually completed the first lot, and that persons are using that. During the CPL period, a lot of persons used that route as a detour, and so that would have been the first lot between Eccles to somewhere by Petershall. We have an issue along the border that falls between the Herstelling and Mocha vicinity. In fact, if you allow me to, you said brief, but
no, go ahead. You go ahead.
For me to speak of what is taking place there, I must go back a little.
Of course.
And so the exact area is actually called Plantation Block X, portion Plantation Herstelling, and commonly called by everybody Caneview. And so that is where we have some hiccups. On that alignment, there were 35 houses that were identified, or structures that were identified, that is falling directly in the path of the alignment. Now, that is a reserve. That was always a reserve. It was never a land that was apportioned to anyone. It was never a land that was regularized. So all the persons who occupy that space were there illegally. And so I want to, first of all, we must establish all the persons who are along that alignment are there occupying illegally. Nevertheless, as a government, as a caring government, and how we operate as a ministry too, is to engage, and to engage so that we can have the best possible outcome. But I want to go back a little though. This corridor, the history of it will show that way back in 2008, you would have had an engagement and preliminary engagement, because always, all PVPC government, the foresight has always been there for us to look at expansion and growth and planning. And so reserves are already kept in part of our design for expansion.
Of course.
As well as, equally important, access So in some cases, reserves are kept for access to drainage network, for ingress, egress, and also, as I said, for growth and expansion. And so that was one corridor, that entire corridor. That is why it was easy for us to use that alignment. And so it was always as a reserve. So it was never owned by anyone else but the state. And so way back in 2008, you would have had an engagement. You would have had, even in 2009, an occupational survey done by CHP, Central Housing and Planning Authority. So the history in this area goes way back.
Yeah.
And so when we got back into office, this current tenure, under President Ali, we were gotten the green light for us to look at a route for us to provide another road networking on the East Bank, and which will also, by the way, it is interconnected, will eventually interconnect with the East Coast.
Yeah.
And so you have the congestion now already when you have to deal with persons who are coming from the West Coast, West Bank, and of course from the traditional areas on the East Bank. There's a bottleneck, for example, at Grove.
Yeah.
There's a bottleneck at Diamond. And that is why in our current expansion, which we'll speak more on this year's budget, it will see us moving from Great Diamond going further, so that we can move past that bottleneck as you have the old traditional highway that is being utilized. And so we would have engaged. And so in 2021, September 2nd, in fact, led by myself as minister, with the CEO of Central Housing and Planning Authority, we engaged the residents there. So I want to make this point clear. So I've seen this point that is being made that there was no engagement, there's lack of consultation. And so I'm going to allow, if you can allow me, I'll provide some dates and I'll provide chronological timelines as to how we've reached to this point.
Okay.
And you'll recognize that, therefore, that the disruption that you see now is merely to disrupt government's program. It's wicked, it's mischievous, and of course we all see is being orchestrated and led by the opposition elements, even at the level of the opposition leader and other APNU leaders who are trying to make themselves relevant. Even yesterday I saw, I'm not sure, but the mayor was somewhere in that vicinity. And so all of this is to ensure that they are trying to stymie the efforts of this PPPC government to bring development for our people, to bring a better livelihood for our people. And we'll go into some of the things that we've done in a few minutes.
Yes,
but I just want to speak to the timeline of how we've reached to this point. And after that, we indicated to those persons that you will have to be relocated. You are falling along the alignment of the 4-lane. We took the maps, we showed them the alignment, we explained to them that we, as an offer, we're providing 2 areas in right across, right nearby, in Herstelling and Farm. There were two lands that are reserve lands that we demarcated and we divided up to make lots available. There were 34 occupants along that stretch, 34, 35. One has since been, one of the 35, that's why it reduced to 34, would have accepted an allocation. And so we engaged them and we indicated a number of things. So, for example, we said there were 20 lots that were identified in Herstelling, and there were 14 that is being identified in Farm.
Okay.
Now, what was this arrangement? The arrangement and the commitment that we made was that we were going to have a valuation exercise be done of the existing structures there. And this is a model that we use as a government in terms of, or as a ministry in terms of when we were dealing with relocation. It's a process. Yeah. This is not anything new. Relocation movement is not anything new exercise that we've been partaking in. This is a routine exercise for us, but we must be cognizant of what exists. Yeah. And so we committed that we would have had an evaluation exercise done. Following the evaluation exercise, persons would have been invited to come in We'll engage you one-on-one as to your valuation on your property that you have existing, and then obviously offer you that compensation. So we went as far as to offer the compensation. Similarly, to also the land that was identified for relocation, to provide the land to them free of cost. So, for example, the Horstelling land, the value, if one was to allocate as per normal, it's about $1.2 million for the value of those lands. The farmland back then would have been in the vicinity of $500,000, right nearby, but there were different periods. Free of cost. We also offered assistance to relocate. We also offered assistance for ensuring that the title is when they would have gotten, once they relocate and occupy this new area, they would have been provided immediately title for their land, because those were areas that were have existing occupancy.
Right.
The titles would have been processed free of charge by the state. All of this information was made available or made known. And so the valuation exercise took place sometime in September. That's when it commenced in 2021. So you can realize how long we were dealing directly with all the persons along that alignment. This valuation exercise, I must re-emphasize too, it's not done by the Ministry of Housing or Central Housing and Planning Authority. It was done by the authorized agency of the country, of the government, and that is at the level, and it was signed off at the level of the Chief Valuation Officer. And so this was done independently of us. Having said that, during October of 2021, we then facilitated all those persons to be able to start the process of signing up, because even in the relocation, we would have had to put them through the process of a signing for the application, so that in our system they can be recognized. We have a unique number for every applicant. So started that exercise in October. And by December, all persons were invited in for the signing of their agreements, as well as to commence the compensation process. And this started since December 2021. And so I want to make that point clear. Then, following that, what happened? By the end of December, which was 1 year ago, we just finished December 2022. So December 2021, we started to pay the checks for compensation. Back then, we had majority of the persons who accepted. And then, in addition, we've paid to date. We have paid to so there are so far about 7 that have not accepted. And so somewhere around 27 persons we have paid to the tune of $250 million compensation. And this does not include for the crops, because we also so far have compensated over $6 million for crops. Because as part, you have the household, you have the house, and then you also have to deal with the crops that exist. Now, the crops was valued, the valuation exercise, that was done by NARI, and that is the recognized agency for dealing with such. NARI are following that. In addition to all of that we've done, I want to make this point clear. We started, when having had a person sign up their agreement, they started the relocation process, they commenced construction. We have success stories of such persons talking about the benefit of having relocated. Those persons that remain along that corridor would have never gotten title for where they occupy, would have never gotten the utility services legally, because, as I said, they're occupying a space that is a reserve. They would never have seen development for themselves in terms of infrastructure work where they live. So the whole aspect of where they relocated to, there's a different environment.
Indeed.
You now have that opportunity to say you have a proper environment for your children. You have that space. You own this land. You own this property. and you, of course, have your water and electricity connected legitimately.
And Minister, you mentioned a few of those success stories that we've seen from those persons who have relocated, and we want to share that with our audience for just a few moments. So if we can take a look at that clip of those persons who would have already relocated.
We're in the Hearst-Stelling community where a number of persons who would have been relocated from the Caneview squatting area are now here constructing their own homes with the support of the Ministry of Housing and Water. Mr. Allen, who was one of the first persons to relocate, tells us about his experience.
Well, we get financial support from housing, right here. We get a compensation on the house, the compensatory on the house and everything. So the time we get 3 months. Plus they even give me more than 3 months, because we get like 4 months. But the current takes a little while, I got 2 weeks to come in there. So, but as soon as I finish, I move in here, so, and then I give them the order for break down my place over, so. It's far better, by way far, but I prefer here, so 100%. Feel more comfortable and safe here.
Sheldon Allen, who squatted for 26 years in the Caneview Avenue, Mocha area, says the relocation process was one that benefited his wife and 2 children.
There was no big, hard process, and everything went smooth. At least we satisfied with the agreement with the MEC and everything. We comply with it, we get the time, we work on everything, and so far I see everything going so smooth so far. I'm satisfied.
Now, just behind me is a 3-bedroom home constructed by Mr. Ford. He said the relocation process was hassle-free.
This one is a blessing, right? To the one who I had, it's a blessing because I got space, enough space. I could bathe inside my house. Everything worked out right. We didn't have no dispute over nothing.
Marvin Ford says living in his new home provides a sense of belonging, much different than how it was while squatting.
It was like ownership of a building, but not the land, ownership of the land. And coming across here is really good to me and my family. And I think other people is supposed to be good too for everybody else.
Last year, government began consultations with the squatters residing on the reserve of the Caneview Avenue, Mocha area, since some 35 persons were on the alignment of the Eccles to Mandela 4-lane road that is now under construction. While the overwhelming majority of 31 squatters have initiated the relocation process to the farm and Hearst-Stelling communities, 4 have remained on the reserve. Minister of Housing and Water Collin Croal, on a recent assessment of the continued squatting at Caneview Avenue, Mocha, noted that his ministry held repeated consultations with residents to provide alternative housing options.
We committed on behalf of the government of Guyana to assist those persons for their relocation, which involves the compensatory part in terms of evaluation being done of the current assessment at that time, having have a costing of the evaluation of what is on the ground. Are committed to help in even their relocation, committed to provide and pay for their costs for processing their transaction, to give them ownership of the land for the new identified location.
Though a number of persons would have gotten checks from the ministry to commence construction of their new homes and have received titles for those properties, Minister Croal outlined the measures to be taken should the remaining 4 persons continue to squat on the Eccles Diamond Highway project site.
We will immediately serve on the final notification, and then the legal process will take its course.
The relocated squatters voiced their support for the construction of the 4-lane highway and said those that refuse to relocate should reconsider.
Life is about betterment. If you come and you tell me you want to build a road, it's development. Development is betterment. They should come to some agreement, at least the majority move, and I don't think that they should really prolong fighting concern, because I don't think they have a case, a winning case. So
I don't know why they're wasting time. If I was them, I'd have gone long, because I was the first person to move, because I see it far better. I tell them move from there long, if I would tell them something, get out of the bed from there and come over here. quite better.
The $13.3 billion Eccles Diamond 4-lane highway, once complete, will significantly reduce traffic congestion and improve connectivity to existing and future housing schemes and commercial zones.
Now, Minister, we've seen the majority of the residents who were living there decided to move. What is the difference between those that have moved and these non-compliant residents?
Well, I think the first thing starts with the elements from the opposition, and instead of, as usual, never being a responsible political group of leaders, again, is not encouraging and showing persons the right thing to do. I started off by saying clearly that we are having a discussion of a portion of land that is reserved. That's the first thing, that we must establish this, and even if we have to repeatedly keep saying this. And having said that, but not recognizing that you have persons who are there for a while, we engaged. Adequate time was provided. We keep repeatedly keep engaging, asking them to come in, to those who did not want to sign those agreements. The ministry door is open, the Central Housing and Planning Authority door is open for them to come in. We've repeatedly said this. We've tried to serve notice. They've been very abusive to the staff, the enforcement department of CHP. But in all of this, you know, when you see development taking place, for some people, it hurts them to see what is happening. And I listened a few minutes ago to some of those persons and who have relocated, accepted, and have moved, and they're happy. They're happy in their new environment in which they occupy. You know, for example, to some of the issues that they raised, relocation for their children, where will they go? The school is they actually relocate very nearby. As I said, it's right within the Horstelling Farm communities. The school is right there. And so we must call a spade a spade. And in all of this, yesterday I think there were a lot of comments being made about the area. But before we can go into that, some of the comments made by opposition, I want to address something in terms of the 7 persons that we have so far.
Go ahead.
So over the last 2 months, we've published repeatedly in the dailies what we have done to date. We have published a final call, a final notice for those persons to come in and engage us, because they repeatedly keep saying to the various reporters that no one is engaging them. But how is it that the others were dealt with? How did the other 28 being engaged? How is the other 28 being dealt with? And we have since broken those houses, but the resistance exists on this set. And having said that, now we have an assessment of those 7 persons. We have since made it available. I've asked that they publish this as form of ad, and so I guess tomorrow it should be appearing. Some of the persons they are asking for ridiculous compensation. As I said, the compensation that was provided, because based on the infrastructure that exists. And so one person here is asking for compensation of $100 million.
And what is the valuation?
And the evaluation is $7.2 million. $100 million. Imagine what is being asked for. But I also want to make this point very clear too. We have said to all of these persons, because removal has to be immediate, and the removal is imminent. We have made available our houses at Great Diamond. We have completed houses. We have made that available in the ad. We repeatedly said that you can relocate immediately. We are making available the house for you. Until even if you want to have something bigger, something larger, something much more better, so be it. But we've made the houses available for all of these remaining 7. It was 8. One has since accepted and moved on, so we reduced to 7. This offer is still available. The ministry door is still open to engage. So it's not too late. And so in another case, another person is asking for compensation of $100,000. And we have also offered farmland for them. Available. But of course, you know, you don't have farmland in Georgetown. So we've offered farmland. Guyana Lands and Survey Commission has made available land for them, which they have not accepted, even as far as 5 acres.
5 acres of
5
land
acres of
each.
land. That's right. In one case, one person is asking for compensation of $150 million and farmlands. The value for that is $5.5 million for that person, the structure that they have there. Because you recognize what existed there, some of the structure that existed. In one case, this one person accepted their compensation and then is seeking additional money to complete their home, their house that they're building right now, and is asking for another $100 million. So you understand what is taking place here.
Yeah.
These 7 that remain, their claim it is ridiculous, it's preposterous, and of course we know what the road that they're trying to take us down. As I said, there's a process, and of course there's another arm that the state can employ, because as I said, these are reserve land.
Yeah.
These are state land. And if you may, you allow me, because I saw in today's Stabrook News.
Yes, of course, and I would want to ask you specifically about those questions, about those things said in that particular article.
Sure.
So one of the things that we've seen in the public domain is the statement that, or the claim rather, that the structures that are there are not in the direct path of the road, but yet still the Ministry of Housing and Water wants them to move. How would you respond to that?
Certainly. Well, we've shown them up. I think, I don't know if it's possible.
Yes, we should have a picture of the map there for persons to see the alignment. If we can have that on screen, that would be really good.
I think I just saw it pop up. So yes, so that is very clear. So you've seen those are from the north and south, and in the middle there are where the structures are. Well, these would have some would have been broken by now, but this gives you a picture of where we at. This is the alignment. And in a 4-lane, you'll require the width. You will realize it's the width that is required, and then you also have to buffer on any 4-lane road. And so it is very clear. The top end of the picture, that is just 2 lanes that is being constructed.
Okay.
So it has to be widened, but you can get a clearer picture from the bottom.
Right.
The bottom is the existing 4-lane width of what we're going with, and you can see clearly it's along the alignment. But I also saw Norton making a comment to say that he's 99 maybe if I can quote him, so I can reply to some of these nonsense. 99% sure that if these people end up moving from here, they are going to give it to their supporters, meaning referring to us in the government. We have clearly shown the purpose of this land. This is not land we're clearing and just leaving it. Contract is awarded $13.3 billion, over 6 kilometers of road, awarded for concrete. A line work is ongoing on either ends. This is the only portion for which work has not started. So you can see from this statement alone that who is being irresponsible, who is trying to lead their supporters down a road of ensuring that there's the block development, stemming any future expansion for our people. You can see clearly who is doing this. And we must call a spade, and the opposition leader, Norton, must be called out for this kind of statement. And secondly, I want to respond to another point that was made. It was also said that the area is ancestors' land. Somewhere along the line, I think I saw some mention was made that this portion of land is ancestor land. Again, we've outlined the history of that area. That area, maybe if I can give, let me give you an example. I just want our listeners to have the right information and adequate information to what is it. This area was held, actually, the whole area was under Gaisuko, held under Divide Transport number 402 of 1892. So so that will answer the whole aspect of ancestors' land within that area.
Right.
But the portion that where we are seeking to ensure that we complete our construction is on the plan, on the design, is a reserve.
Yeah.
And then the other point that was made, they went on to compare. For example, last week you would have had an exercise for titles
Pigeon
distribution
Island.
for Pigeon Island,
Right.
as an example. And I know, as usual, a race card is being brought out to be played here. Pigeon Island is an area that has been identified. Yes, recognize that that area can be regularized as it is. However, even for the infrastructure work for the road to be done within the area, there are persons who had to move their fence to accommodate the road networking within the Pigeon Island area. So it's a similar scenario as in Amelia's ward in Linden, where we had to move about 16 persons along the alignment to access the area, because there you were having 16 fences, so 16 structures blocking the ingress and egress for us to develop an area for over 400 and odd persons who were allocated. So that was a similar scenario in Amelia's ward. In any area, in any development, you have to cater for road networking. You have to cater for the drainage. Equally important is the drainage. So next to this, even this road alignment will have to be the drainage network. And that's why I indicated to you also need a buffer in addition for the road. And so to put the analogy between what is taking place at Pigeon Island versus what is being done here, you can understand is the only thing that they have been, the only strike that they go to, that is to bring the race card.
Yeah.
And I've shown clearly, I've outlined clearly to our listeners the steps we took to involve everyone, the ridiculous and preposterous claim that is now being made for compensation for the few that remain. We have gone the extra mile where we've made the houses available. Right now it's available. If they even at this 8-9 o'clock hour that they want to decide that they're going to relocate and they want to occupy that house, the key is available as I speak for them to relocate. All of that.
Yeah.
We've indicated and we've worked, and I think so the time has reached a stage now that we cannot hold off. We have to move forward.
Yeah.
However, the Ministry of Housing and Water, the Minister, and the Central Housing and Planning Authority, our doors are open for anyone who wants to come in and speak to us.
Minister, I want to thank you for taking the opportunity to have this discussion this evening and for leaving that information and reminding persons who are there that the doors are still open to the Ministry of Housing and Water and the Central Housing and Planning Authority. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And so let me close by saying this.
Sure.
We have a term that we use in terms of housing. We call it zero tolerance. So in terms of that alignment, that portion of alignment would have been zero tolerance in terms for encouraging and allowing permanency or any future fixed infrastructure development. And so similarly, I want to make this call to those persons. Do not continue to be misled by opposition political elements and persons who are seeking to make themselves relevant, because over the last 2 days I think a number of persons were trying to call me from the opposition, persons who have no business within that Mocha or Stelling area. They don't live there, persons including the mayor, but they are just seeking there to create mischief, havoc, similarly as what took place with front of the Georgetown Hospital, where we must clear all encumbrances. We must have clear path and access. We must have access for emergency. We must have access for ensuring mobility. We must have access for ensuring that the safety of our citizens are intact. And if you count in terms of the economics, and if we want to talk a little on the economics and the downtime that one has to spend on the East Bank in waiting in that traffic, obviously, what we are seeking to do is to ensure that we can have a quick access, quick for all our persons to get home, persons who are going to the airport, persons who are going to wherever, to ensure that they'll be able to reach in a timely manner. More cars are coming into the country. More cars are being registered yearly. Persons, as they become more affluent, they also are buying. Because of more disposable income, and because our country is doing better, we owe it as a government, therefore, to ensure that we are able to work with all of our citizens to bring betterment for them, to bring development for them. And development means, therefore, that we also create an environment that our children can live in comfortable, an environment that our children can say, this is my own land, this is my own house, an environment that our children can have access to the best possible education and social services. And that is what you'll get from this government. So when we seek to relocate, when we seek to regularize, when we seek to ensure that we have a path that is cleared to ensure that we have expansion, this is part of the growth of our country. But we do this in a responsible manner. And we have been addressing the issue here along the Caneview area, as it's commonly called. We've been doing this in a responsible way as a government. We've engaged. A lot of time has gone. Persons have moved, so the evidence is there. So one cannot say, the 7 that remain cannot say that they were not given adequate time.
Yeah.
It is now, the ball is now in their final court. Thank you very much.
Minister Croal, thank you once again. That has been the Minister of Housing and Water, Minister Collin Croal, giving us an update on the information and the update on what is happening in the Caneview area on the east bank of Demerara. I'm Shaquan Gill saying bye for now.
Good night.
Management of Guyana's water resources is recognized as critical to development. In light of this, the Low Carbon Development Strategy, LCDS,